here with Emily Carter. Today, we're diving into some of the most mysterious dances ever recorded. Rituals that, honestly, I still can't quite wrap my head around.
Hello. I'm so excited for this one, Michael. We're starting with the Babylonian Dance of the Falling Towers, right? I mean, just the name gives me chills. Imagine a dance designed to keep a ziggurat from collapsing, like literally moving to hold up the world.
Yeah, it's wild. The idea was, if you performed these spiral falls, each touch of the ground calculated with sacred geometry, you could somehow prevent disaster. I always picture these dancers spinning down, almost like they're imitating the collapse, but in a way that's controlled, almost mathematical.
And what's fascinating is that the Yazidis still preserve this as Jad Varoué. It's not just a relic, it's living tradition. I wonder, Michael, do you think the geometry was more than just symbolic? Like, could it have been a kind of code?
I mean, I wouldn't rule it out. Ancient cultures loved embedding secrets in plain sight. And then you've got the Dogon zigzag of Sirius B. That's a whole other level. Their dance literally traces the orbit of a star you can't even see with the naked eye. Sirius B, right?
Yes, the Dogon only perform it every 50 years when Potolo, that's Sirius B, hits its zenith. The choreography repeats the star's path, which, I mean, how did they know? Centuries before astronomers even confirmed Sirius B existed. It's like the dance is a map of the cosmos.
And the only way to learn it is from the Ogoni priests, after you've supposedly seen the Nomos, these water spirits. I always get goosebumps thinking about that. It's not just a performance, it's a rite of passage.
It makes me think about how choreography can be a language. In modern dance, we sometimes use movement to hint at things we can't say out loud. Maybe these ancient dances were like that, hiding cosmic or architectural secrets in the steps. I mean, I've never danced to save a building, but I have felt that sense of something bigger moving through you.
Yeah, and maybe that's the point. The steps are just the surface. Underneath, there's this whole world of meaning, geometry, astronomy, even spiritual initiation. It's like you're not just learning a dance, you're learning how to see the world differently.
Speaking of seeing differently, let's talk about the Egyptian sleep of the Sphinx. 40 days in a sarcophagus, no food, no water, in the Serapeum. That's not just endurance, that's, I don't even know what to call it, madness, or maybe enlightenment.
I mean, I can barely go a day without snacks, let alone 40. But it's a spiritual test, right? Isolation, darkness, pushing the body to its absolute limit. It reminds me of this experiment I did with my students. Nothing that extreme, obviously. We tried sensory deprivation for just an hour. Some of them said it felt like time stopped or like they were floating. It's not the same, but it gave us a tiny glimpse of what those initiates might have experienced.
That's so interesting. And then you've got the Celts on the Isle of Skye with the Way of the Mist, disappearing in front of hundreds of people, blending myth and practice. It's almost like a magic trick, but rooted in something deeper. Maybe a kind of mindfulness or just knowing how to move with the land?
Yeah, I always picture it as this dance with the environment. Like, you're not just vanishing, you're becoming part of the mist, the landscape. It's not about fooling people, it's about dissolving the boundaries between you and the world. I think there's a lesson there, about how endurance isn't just physical. Sometimes it's about letting go of your sense of self.
Exactly. And maybe that's what connects all these practices, whether it's isolation in Egypt or vanishing in Scotland. They're all about testing the body, but also about transforming the mind. I mean, I'm not volunteering for 40 days in a sarcophagus, but I do think there's something to be learned from pushing our limits, even in small ways.
Now, if we're talking about pushing limits, we have to mention the Shaolin Iron Lotus, breaking a stone with your bare stomach in lotus pose. I mean, that's just, how do you even train for that?
It's mind-blowing. And then there's the Ghost Blade style in Sichuan. 7 years in darkness under Master Li Jianfei. You have to pass the blindness test just to be accepted. That's not just physical strength. That's a whole different kind of mastery.
And in California, you've got the orichalcum flow project. People trying to find the universal thread in all these practices. I think it's run by the Institute of Noetics, Dr. Rollin McCratty. They're looking for what connects a Shaolin monk to a Celtic druid or an Egyptian initiate. It's ambitious, maybe a little out there, but I get the appeal.
It all comes back to that quote from Zhuang Zhou, doesn't it? The body is the last door and the first. The master does not overcome limits. He learns that there are none. I love that. Dance becomes light. Fighting becomes silence. It's not about conquering the world, it's about going deeper within yourself.
Yeah, and I think that's what all these stories are really about. Not just feats of strength or endurance, but journeys inward.
With Plato's legend of orichalcum crystals. You know, the idea that priests could levitate stone blocks using resonance, it's almost too fantastic to believe, but there are these odd parallels with modern acoustic levitation.
Yeah, and the way Plato described it, 12 priests would rotate in a spiral, creating this acoustic field. It's a bit like the Zimmerman effect, right? Where a group rotates in water with 9 hertz infrasound. I always get a kick out of how these ancient stories line up with stuff we're only just starting to understand scientifically.
Exactly. And that 9 hertz infrasound, it's not just a random number. There are ancient texts that mention group rituals using low-frequency sound. I remember visiting Delphi and just feeling this resonance in the stones. It made me wonder if these sites were intentionally engineered for sound. You know, like, did they really know how to harness these frequencies?
I mean, it's possible. Or maybe we're just reading into it because we want to find patterns. But the fact that these legends keep popping up in different cultures, there's got to be something to it. Or maybe I'm just too much of a romantic about this stuff.
No, I get it. There's something magical about the idea of resonance as a bridge between science and spirituality. And honestly, the more I learn, the more I think ancient people were way more intentional with their architecture and rituals than we give them credit for. Speaking of intention, have you heard about the Lemurian breath of stone? It's this meditative trance where practitioners would stand motionless for like 72 hours. The idea was to slow their pulse down to 1 beat every 10 minutes and exchange minerals with the rock. It's both physical and spiritual, almost like becoming part of the stone itself.
That just blows my mind. I can't even sit still for 10 minutes, let alone 72 hours. But it makes sense in a way. If you believe that the earth can rejuvenate you, why not try to merge with it? And then there's the Babylonian dance of the falling towers. This was a ritual to protect ziggurats from destruction, right?
Yes, and the movements are so symbolic. Dancers would spiral and fall, imitating the collapse of a tower, but every touch of the ground was calculated using sacred geometry. It's like they were encoding architectural knowledge into the dance itself. And what's fascinating is that the Yazidis still preserve a version of this ritual called Jad wa Rui.
You know, that reminds me of when I was teaching. I had my students try to reenact some ancient dances. It was a bit chaotic, lots of giggling and tripping over each other, but it really made the knowledge stick. There's something about performing these movements that helps you understand them on a deeper level. Maybe that's how these traditions survived for so long, even when the original meaning got a bit fuzzy.
Absolutely. Dance and ritual are such powerful ways to transmit knowledge, especially when it's too complex or sacred to write down. It's like the body remembers what the mind can't always explain.
All right, let's get a little weirder. The martial arts from these traditions are just, the ghost blade style from China, fighting with an invisible weapon, training against a shadow that can actually leave cuts. Apparently it involved mercury vapors and ultrasonic whistles that caused micro-tears in the skin. It's almost like science fiction.
And then there's the Icelandic hurgle fight. Practitioners would paint magical signs, Aegishjalmars, on their bodies with raven blood and enter this trance state called Ulf Hamir. Supposedly 7 opponents would appear as one. I don't know if that's literal or just how it felt in the heat of battle, but it's a fascinating blend of magic and psychology.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how much of it was altered states and how much was just clever tactics. But the Dogon zigzag of Sirius B, now that's something else. Their ritual dance actually mapped the orbit of Sirius B, which, as far as we know, they recognized centuries before astronomers did. And they only performed it every 50 years, when Sirius B, Potolo, was at the zenith.
It's almost unbelievable, isn't it? These practices hint at a level of understanding about physics and the cosmos that we usually don't associate with ancient societies. I think what fascinates me most is how ritual and science were so intertwined. There wasn't this hard line between the two. The dance, the martial art, the meditation, they were all ways of exploring and expressing cosmic truths.
Yeah, maybe the real secret is that the limits we think we have, they're not as solid as we imagine.
And maybe, if we're lucky, we catch a glimpse of that, whether we're dancing, meditating, or just listening to stories like these. I think that's a good place to leave it for today, don't you?
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on Jess It. We'll be back with more journeys into the unknown. Emily, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you to everyone listening. Until next time, keep searching and keep dancing in your own way. Goodbye.
See you soon.